Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Real Stories of Success. We have got a very special treat for you today. Austin, what are we working on, man?
Oh, we've got Jonathan McKinnies with us. Jonathan's out of South Bend. Some of the stuff that I was looking over and I saw about Jonathan, he served 2,000 families since 2016. 2,000, that's a ton of loans. For those that know Ask a Lender, it was a website that used to rank mortgage lenders in the country and in the state. And Jonathan was number 1 in South Bend and number 9 in Indiana overall in 2018. Those are some really, really awesome stats, and we're excited to have him here with us.
So,
thank you guys for allowing me to be here. Appreciate it.
No, Jonathan, we definitely appreciate your time. And I know just the conversation you and I had on the phone last week, I was really blown away with, not just the impressive stats that you've put up over your lending career, but more so even just the work that you're doing outside of the lending world. And I'd like to almost start with that, if you don't mind, because I'm really impressed by the work you're doing within the community, the work that you're doing to serve people around you. And heck, you're even doing a podcast that's all about empowerment. I'd really kind of like to dive into that because just from our conversation, it really seems like that's one of the central hubs for how your business is growing and how you're running your business. Is that fair?
Absolutely. Yeah. So when it comes to my personal, purpose, I always want to look at my purpose in a broader sense than just doing mortgages or just managing a branch. And so I see my purpose as one where my why is more so I've been given a platform. We all have a platform in life, and that is we can influence people in one way or another, whether it's negative or positive. And
absolutely,
for me, I feel like my platform I've been given is one where I can serve people in the community through our ministry, through my church, and then also obviously through my position within our company. And so every time I'm serving a family or I'm helping somebody within our office, I have to remind myself of my purpose, and that is to positively influence them. And it kind of helps drive me with the business that I do. And I think a byproduct of having a mentality of serving, and I'm not perfect. We all have, good and bad days, but I feel like a byproduct of my mental attitude of trying to serve people really helps me in my business and in other areas of my life.
I love that.
I do too. Yeah. So tell us, you kind of touched on a little bit there, church and being involved in your community. And I was honored enough to come up and be on a panel for you too. Tell us about what associations that you're in and how that helps you in your day-to-day business and what that leads to, that networking that you're doing.
That's a good question. When I first got into the mortgage business, I always had the mentality of I'm going to work, I'm going to go home, I'm going to turn it off. And it's good. You want to turn it off and kind of not bring work home and everything. But I never really had the thought of volunteering within the industry. And what I mean by that is serving on like the Indiana Mortgage Bankers Association board. I'm the Michiana chapter president this year. And I've been serving on the board for many years, but I never really engaged in it. And I've been a little bit more engaged on a deeper level with serving on our board. And it's been a great opportunity for me to, once again, positively influence people. So I see it more in my leadership role within our company. I see it as a way for me to connect within the industry when maybe before I had a selfish approach where I was just more so, hey, if it's not a money producing activity that was going to yield me, results right away, then I maybe would not do it. And maybe I've changed my mentality where I'm thinking, if I can serve within the industry as well, then it's going to help me ultimately. I may not be able to track it and say, okay, what's the ROI on doing this? But I can at least say that I've made more connections and I've been able to influence other people within the industry positively. And I know that it may be intangible, but I know that it will yield more results for myself, our company, and my family.
That's a huge takeaway. If people out there listening, that is an enormous takeaway for you right there.
Absolutely couldn't agree more. And I think so much of what you just said there is so invaluable to people because it's so easy, especially in a sales type role or environment, to just focus on those metrics that drive dollars. And that's great. And that's why we all go to work every day. But I think what I love most about what you've shared up to this point is your absolute desire to provide a positive impact to the people around you. And that's not just the people that you're serving with loans, but that's the team that you've built. And that's the work that you're doing within the community to give back and always be providing value. I absolutely love that. So Let me kind of digress a little bit from there, and let's go back to the beginning of when you decided to get into this, world of lending, and kind of unbox, because so much of what we want to talk about on this on this show is really giving people practical, actionable takeaways of things that they can do. What's that spark that's going to help move their business, their career forward, and I believe we get that from telling stories. So kind of take us back to the beginning of your journey in this business. What were some of the things that you really attribute your early success to, and how did that start to build over time?
Mm-hmm. Well, in the mortgage business, I actually started in April of 2006. Austin, I think you said 2016. You said 2000
Oh,
families.
I'm sorry.
Man,
yeah.
that'd be really good. 2006, I served 2,000 families since then. But when I started in 2006, I had no industry experience whatsoever. I was actually still in college, and I was finishing my business degree locally. I went to IUSB, Indiana University, South Bend. And I was looking into, some sort of a business management type of a role eventually. And I stumbled into the mortgage industry simply because I had family that was real estate agents. And it was just a connection that I, was able to take advantage of. Sometimes it is important to know people that's going to give you an opportunity and give
Definitely.
you a shot. And so I got into it not knowing anything. And I remember vividly, I was about 6 months into my career in the industry. I was still finishing up college, and I went into my branch manager's office, and I was nearly in tears, saying, feeling defeated, feeling like there's no way I'm going to survive this business. I hate it. I don't like sales, if you will. I don't like having to speak in front of people in public. I didn't like to do any of that. And I was thinking, man, I'm just not a good fit for this. I don't know how he did, but he talked me into just hanging there for like another couple months. And I did, the needle started to move a little bit, and I started to gain relationships, and that made a big difference. And once I started realizing that it wasn't so much about sales, it was just gaining trust and relationship building on a one-on-one level, I was able to continue to gain success, and the momentum started. And as the momentum started to grow, then it was easier for me to have stability within the industry. Yeah. But I remember my brother, he had some pretty good success in life, and I couldn't even pay my cell phone bill. He was paying my bills for me a little bit. And I was living at home with mom and dad when I was trying to start everything. And so I remember feeling very, very small, not really having much going for me, but I just continued to grind and implemented everything. One thing that I will say that led to my success is I implemented everything I was told to do. So when my manager said, do this, implement it. When I read certain books on the mortgage industry, I just applied what I was learning instead of saying, hey, that's a good idea, and then never doing anything with it. And I think application is so important. A lot of people just never do that.
Man, I couldn't agree more with that.
Yeah, for sure. Tell us about some of those books. What are some of those books that you were reading early on?
Yeah, early on, I was actually really digging into Todd Duncan. If you're familiar with Todd Duncan within the mortgage industry, those who are in the mortgage field, they know high trust sales. That was really what I dug into initially, was just getting into high trust selling and understanding that it was all about relationship. And I just implemented the process that Todd Duncan had kind of taught when I was early on in the business. And then I started getting into, as I started implementing that, I started realizing there were some books that really helped me kind of shape my business. And one of the books that I thought shaped my business was written by Michael Mayer. It's called The 7 Levels of Communication.
Love that.
And it's written by a real estate agent. He was a top producing realtor. It was a really cool parable story about how a real estate agent was having success, or he was having failure, and then he continued to grow success in his career. And there were some tactical things that he implemented. So that was big for me. And then one thing that really changed just about, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago, there's a book written by Hal Elrod called The Miracle Morning. And it's something that anybody can implement. You don't even have to be necessarily in business. And it's all about what your morning routine looks like. And for me, that was a really big deal, because when you start your day off on the right foot, then you can continue to kind of focus on those green activities throughout the day. But I think a lot of people, especially in sales, they'll kind of crawl out of bed. They don't have a morning routine. They just go into the office and they just, whatever comes. And then they never really have a really good proactive approach to their day. And that book really taught me a lot about having a good morning routine. And then the final book, I would say, if we're talking about books, is the series called The Go Giver. And if anybody's read the Go Giver series, If you haven't read it, I would encourage you to read that. That's actually how I've formed most of my business. When I took over as a branch manager here, one of the first things that I told the group was that my philosophy is built on the lessons found in that book, The Go-Giver. And so I think it was really good.
Absolutely love that. If you don't mind, I'd like to go back to something you said just a second ago, specifically about the Miracle Morning book. I've read that book, and I absolutely could not agree more that I mean, so many people in this industry, or any industry, they wake up without that sense of direction or purpose, or what am I actually trying to accomplish today? And then, you go through, your day kind of laissez-faire, and then you kind of get those results. And kind of walk us through and unbox what does your morning look like now, relative to when you were getting started? What are those routines? What are those habits that have really ingrained and helped lead to, your success as the years have gone on?
Yeah, well, the book itself, just really quick in a nutshell, he implements what's called Life Savers routine, where SAVERS is an acronym for silence, affirmation, visualization, exercise, reading, and scribing. And so scribing would be like journaling. And for me, I would say I don't implement everything exactly like the book says. But it's really funny, and I've said this in my own podcast, a lot of times when you first get up, a lot of people don't wash their face, they don't brush their teeth, and they don't drink a glass of water. I know it sounds simple, but if you're trying to get up earlier in the morning and you're trying to have a better routine, the first thing you do is you got to get up. But when you first get up, you wash your face, you brush your teeth, and you drink a big glass of water, and it wakes you up a lot quicker than just kind of rolling out of bed and just kind of just shuffling down into the kitchen and all that. It's something that really important. So that's the first part of my day, is doing that. But then when it comes to the silence and affirmations, I do have affirmations that I'll say, but it's nothing that I've written down. And I'm really big into prayer. And so that's the first part of my day, is just getting into scripture, getting into prayer, and really feeding myself positive things as opposed to just everything else. Now, do I get on Facebook? Do I check email? Do I, check text messages? I still do that. But I make a point to make sure that I'm focused on the reading and the prayer part, which is, to me, is very important. So that's the first part of the day. And then I do exercise pretty much every morning. So I'll either run a few miles on a treadmill or outside, or I'll do a 25-minute, 30-minute workout. And so that's a big part of my day. And then I try to read outside of scripture. I'll try to read another book. And so a book that I've been really focused on in the last, probably month, is a book called, The Compound Effect is one that I was reading with by Darren Hardy. But the one that I've been focused on that's similar to that is called Divine Direction by Craig Rochelle. And that's been a really good book for me. And I've been implementing some of the tactics in that book as well. And that's pretty much it. And then I get ready for the day. I've got my children that I take to school, and I hang out with them, have a little breakfast with my wife. And that's pretty much how my mornings go. But I try to make sure I start it on the right track. So I'm waking up before everybody else.
Love
to
that.
say the least.
Yeah, I love that. I had the opportunity to meet Hal one time at one of our events, and if you ever run across him and hear him talk, it's a life-changing thing. So let's switch gears a little bit. What I'm really interested in, and I think a lot of our audience is interested in, and where people go from, hey, I was this loan officer, right? I know how to control everything that I'm doing day to day, or I'm this realtor and I'm good at my day to day, but then I want to build a team and I want to grow and I want to become that manager, that leader. What was those steps? What are things that you did to go from just regular loan officer to branch manager now?
Well, the branch manager position itself, I kind of necessity, I took over, but leading up to
that happens a lot of times too, right?
Yeah. So, but leading up to my growth, I went on a kind of a journey of trying to find a good assistant. And I do believe that if you're going to be successful, you have to be willing to delegate, and you can't be the expert at everything. And you have to be willing to give up the reins on a lot of things in your business in order for you to really grow and focus on the things that you need to focus on, And so I went through multiple assistants. And I think initially my issue was I was probably cutting corners on the hiring process, and I wasn't willing to invest maybe as much in a good assistant. And so I got into a coaching program, but even before I did, my first really good hire, and I had some good hires that maybe lasted a year and a half or so. But the assistant that I hired now, she's my transaction manager. Her name's Laura. When I hired her, I said, I'm not going to cut any corners. I'm going to make sure that I have somebody that I just feel like they are a rock star. And so I started with her as the foundation, and I was able to kind of build around me and her. And first thing I did is in the process of a mortgage, there's many different phases. And so I wanted to break up my phases. I knew the system, like I knew exactly what my touch points were. And I think what's so important is you have to have a written system, and you don't build your business necessarily just around a person, but you're building it around the system so that a person, if they left you can always plug them into the system. And so she kind of helped me grow the system though. And I had some trial and error, but she's my transaction manager. So right when that loan gets submitted, she's kind of the one that takes over, and she helps with communication. And then from there, I was able to build some teammates on the front end that helps me with production. And they kind of are the in-house lender, if you will, the loan officer that can take incoming calls. They intake the lead, and they make sure that they're not leaving them, waiting too long to get an application started. So I built it around a very good person, and then from there, my system just continued to grow. But I had it in writing. One thing that I'll tell everybody is if you're trying to build a team, and you say that hey, my business will grow when I hire somebody. If your business isn't growing because of your systems that you already have in place, then throwing an assistant at a mess is not going to clean up your mess.
We've seen that a lot.
You need to have a system first, and then you can plug somebody in, and then you continue to grow from there. And that to me is a big part of it.
I think I've made that mistake myself, and you try to just plug somebody in to solve a problem, and it doesn't always work. You've got to have the system in place, and you couldn't be more spot on with that. You said something a second ago which kind of leads into the next talking point, but you mentioned that you're part of a coaching or mentor program that really helped you maybe understand what steps you needed to take to not skip those steps when hiring. Would you mind unboxing that for us and kind of share with us how that helped you not make that same mistake again, and which has obviously led to some really incredible success, it sounds like?
Yeah, I've got it's actually a real estate agent and a loan officer coaching program. And I actually have a coaching call here after this interview. But it is called The Core. If you've not heard of it, you probably have. But the Core coaching is one that, to me, it gives me, number one, very specific job descriptions of people that you would be able to hire. So it's helped me just really hone in on exactly what they should be doing when they should be doing it on my team. Number two, it actually has given me theme days. And so with the coaching, it's very, very simple stuff. It's nothing that's rocket science. Really, most of the time, it's all about accountability anyway when it comes to success. And as long as you're accountable to somebody and you're willing to do what they say, then you're coachable, then you're going to be successful. But most people are lazy, or they don't want to implement, or they have a level of pride in them where they don't want to do what they're told to do because, I built myself up to this point, so I'm not going to do it. But with the program, it's all about surrendering to the coaching. And it's all about theme days. And so each day of the week, Monday through Friday, you have green activities or money producing activities that you implement. And that, as you all know, when you're in a sales type of a role, you're always going to be given distractions all day. And so if you are always just at the mercy of the distraction, you're never going to do the money producing activities. That's where a team helps, because if there are distractions, you can delegate those distractions to other people. But what it does is it tells you, okay, here's what I do on Mondays, here's what I do on Tuesdays for at least this block of time. And if for some reason I have a distraction, I can always go back to what my theme day is. So I know on Mondays for me, I am to connect with my real estate agent partners. And if I have 4 different distractions throughout, then I know I always go right back to what the theme of that day is, so I don't leave the day feeling defeated. I still have days where I don't do what I need to do, but ultimately it still helps keep me centered, So that program's helped me with that.
A lot of the things that you're saying here are things that we've talked about on this podcast. Just to kind of recap for everybody, we're talking about foundation, getting that right, putting your systems in place, getting coached, right? We've talked about that on several podcasts, right? Getting coached is a big, big thing for both of us, and time blocking. So if people are looking for takeaways, let's talk about your podcast. So walk us through that. How can people find you? What is it that you're talking about in your podcast, and how often does it come out? That kind of thing.
Yeah. So I just kind of got into it a year ago, not really knowing what I was really going to do, what the impact would be on me. And I just thought, you know what, this is a pretty cool opportunity. And so I started the podcast with the premise, or the title of it is called Purpose and Performance. And it's not really mortgage related at all or industry related. It's more so just using our purpose, or figuring out our purpose in our day, in our life, as an individual or as a business owner, or as somebody in sales, and then increasing our performance and continuing to improve our performance. And so what is our purpose, and how can we improve our performance? And that's pretty much all it was. And so I just interviewed some folks, and I actually started with The Go Giver, that book I was telling you about, the first few episodes last season. And I only did like a 5 or 10 minute recording on the first like 3 podcast episodes, very, very short. I didn't really know how long I wanted it to be. And then I realized I needed it to be a little bit longer, because people need to learn more about me, learn more about the situation or the subject. And so I started interviewing more people and adding a little bit more time onto it. But as an example, I interviewed a very cool, dynamic speaker. She's actually a coach. Her name's Amber Selking, last season. And she has the Selking Performance Group, where she is the mental performance coach of the Notre Dame football team. So she was on last season, which was really cool. I had, a pastor and a leader. He's actually the current chair of the local NAACP within South Bend. I had him on last season. He's a friend of mine, Michael Patton. I had multiple people on last season, but this season we just started just a few weeks ago. And so every 2 weeks we're having a new guest, and my subject for each of the episodes is just a 1-word topic. And so the first episode was me just talking about making small choices. But then every interview that I have, I'm just trying to unfold 1 word and really dig into it. So this last episode that was just released last week is called listening, really listening, and what that means and how you can be present when you're listening. So I had the president of Oaklawn. It's a psychiatric place. He's a psychologist. He was talking about how, a person can really listen and really change a life just by listening. So we talked about that. And so that's the kind of stuff that I'm getting into. It's more so just personal development, and hopefully it resonates with everybody, not just people that are in, the mortgage or the real estate business.
I think that's fantastic with the work that you're doing there. I mean, you're so focused from everything that you and I have talked about to everything you've shared up to this point. It seems like everything's centered around one ideal, and that's providing value. You're trying to help people in almost every single situation. Well, every single situation you're exploring right now. And I just love the work that you're doing, and you're really focusing on helping people take another step, it sounds like. And I'm sure you've got some great success stories already from, that podcast you were telling me about, the lady from Notre Dame and that work that she's doing around mental performance. And I strongly feel that so many people in our industry, especially, they don't focus on what's up here. They don't focus on what's going on between their ears. They focus on, this widget or that widget, or I need this piece of technology there. And they miss that part. And truly, I think we're all just one step away, one conversation away from magic happening in our lives. And that all happens with what's going on between our ears. So I just love the work you're doing in that area, man. So thank you.
Thank you.
So shifting gears one more time here, and I know you've got to get scooting here, but tell us what's with everything you have going on. I mean, you're closing over 200 loans a year. You're running a team. You're doing ministry work. You're doing a podcast. You have all these amazing things going on in addition to your family. What's keeping you up at night from a business perspective, man? Kind of walk us through like what's going through your mind and what's driving you forward.
Yeah. So what I focus on is continuing to improve my system. And I know that really ultimately it rests upon me. And, I don't know about you guys, but you get into those ruts where you have burnout. And I think in life, you always, even if you're, you work at a high caliber and a high level, there's still going to be days or times of seasons where there's burnout. And so for me, especially getting into the fall months, it's easy for you to get into a kind of a lazy mode, if you will, just because you feel like you've kind of gotten through the busy season, and so burnout starts to set in. And so for me, it's still about, like you were saying, like keeping your mind right. And so it's so important. It's so vital for me to stay centered. And actually, I just got with our team, and we were talking about this in our last sales meeting, and how everyone pulls up their 4 fingers when there's the fourth quarter in football. So we're talking about the fourth quarter. Okay, so it's the fourth quarter of the year. Don't be lazy. Recenter on what your goals were. And actually, you need to. We had to review our goals and realize that this year we were actually off. I didn't hit my numbers that I wanted to hit leading up to this point. And so you have to restructure your last quarter. I mean, you almost have to look at your life and your business in a quarter or monthly and quarterly kind of chunks as opposed to just the year. And so that's what we've done. So my last quarter of the year, that's my focus right now, is just recentering on what are the activities I need to do right now. And I'm trying to motivate the other people within our branch because I feel I need to be a good steward of them, being a good overseer of the people that I'm, in charge of, that I'm trying to help. And I'm trying to just help them recenter on this last quarter of the year. So that's my big focus right now.
I love that. Well, we appreciate you coming on. This has been amazing. Give the audience a couple things. Give them some takeaways. If you want them to take away anything from this podcast, what would that be? And then also let them know what's the best way to get a hold of you. If websites, emails, your podcast. Obviously, we talked about that kind of thing. So,
yeah. So I would say if there's any takeaways, so my thought would be realize that you all have a platform. And you can use it wisely, or you can really ruin your opportunity to influence people the right way. And so whatever platform you're on, whether you're a college student, whether you're a business owner, whether you're just getting into sales, whether you're a stay-at-home mother, it doesn't really matter. You are all given a platform. And so each day you have a choice, and either you can respond to the situations and circumstances in a thoughtful way, or you can react. And that is sometimes react is where you're unthoughtful, you just knee-jerk reaction, and you sometimes ruin that conversation, or you ruin a relationship. So we all have been given a platform. So remember your why. Remember that you are always on a platform and people are looking at you whether you like it or not. So that's I would say that's the main takeaway that I would give everybody. And for me, if you just want to connect with me, if you want to go to the podcast, you can go to Purpose and Performance Podcast. That's on all the platforms, iTunes, Google Play, Podbean. You can go to my website, McKinniesteam.com. And at McKinniesteam.com, you'll find just some information on our team and ways to connect with me on there as well. And McKinniesteam.com, McKinnies, team.com. It's a kind of an uncommon way to pronounce McKinnis. It's not McKinnies. It's McKinnis.
Probably heard that once or twice, it sounds like. But
right. Yeah.
Jonathan, it's been a pleasure. We really, really appreciate your time. Love to have you back on again sometime. You've got a wealth of knowledge, and we'd love to dive a little deeper into some of these topics for sure. And again, we can't thank you enough for everything today, man.
Thank you, sir.
Cool. I appreciate the opportunity, guys.
Absolutely. Enjoy the day. All right, that wraps up another edition of Real Stories of Success. If you got something out of this, and there's no way you didn't, Jonathan was absolutely fantastic. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review iTunes, all of your favorite podcast platforms.
For those of you guys looking to get a hold of us, go to our show notes. You'll see our email, and we look forward to hearing your questions or maybe even suggestions that you have for upcoming shows.
And that's it for this edition of Real Stories of Success. Again, we thank you very much for your time today.